Okay, so this is where we left off yesterday. So one of the solutions to the two problems that they're going to face politically at the beginning of the government under George Washington's administration is that they're going to have to start to establish leaders to serve in the public eye. And so one of these people is Alexander Hamilton, like we went over yesterday, who's going to serve as Secretary of Treasury. So he's in charge of the money. And Thomas Jefferson is going to be the Secretary of State, who is in charge of foreign policy and negotiating treaties and that sort of thing. Okay, so moving on to the next solution, number 2, is the Judiciary Act of 1789. This is going to set up the Supreme Court. It's going to establish a lower federal court in every state, and it's going to establish the U.S. Marshals. So under this Judiciary Act of 1789, you need to make sure that you make note of this in your notes as well. You don't have to write it word for word, but you do need to have it detailed enough that you understand what you are saying. Okay, so this is going to start to establish that court system that's going to enforce and carry out laws, and if those laws are broken, then it is going to punish or persecute those who are breaking the laws. Okay, the next solution is going to be the Bill of Rights being added to the Constitution. So one of the worries or the problems that they were facing with this new government is that they feared that the government was going to be too powerful. And so the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists are going to debate this issue in the Constitutional Convention. And the solution that they developed is the Bill of Rights. The Anti-Federalists believed that there should be a weaker central government, while the Federalists believe in a stronger central government. So to please the Anti-Federalists, the Federalists agreed to having the Bill of Rights added to the Constitution. And all the Bill of Rights is the first 10 amendments. So basically it is just a list of rights that American people automatically get just for being American citizens. Okay, so this is going to be a compromise between the two parties. The fourth solution to preventing that the government is going to be too powerful is Washington only serving 2 terms. So they fear that the government is going to get out of hand and that the president is going to become more like a king. So the way that Washington sees to solve this problem is to only serve 2 terms. Now, what you need to know is that this was not required during this time period. The president could serve as many terms as they wished. However, Washington is going to sort of set the precedent or the pattern where presidents are only going to serve 2 terms. If you can think about it for a second, there is another point in history where a president will serve more than 2 terms, and that's going to be in the 30s and 40s when FDR is the president during World War II. Okay, moving on to solution number 5. So really, the Whiskey Rebellion is going to come off as more of a problem, right? But it's also going to serve as a solution in the sense that it proves that the federal government does have the authority and it is going to work with controlling its people. So one of the fears was that the government wasn't going to be powerful enough to do anything. And they had this fear because under the Articles of Confederation, the government wasn't able to do anything. Okay, so we talked about yesterday that the people are going to start to protest the tax that is put on whiskey. And this is an excise tax because it is a tax placed on a specific good. And the tax is actually placed on the grain that is used to make the whiskey. And as we talked about, the farmers are going to be the ones who are really frustrated by this tax because it's going to make their products less desirable. Okay, we're going to watch this short video that's going to explain it in a little more detail.
Before 1790, the only legitimate federal taxes were tariffs, or import duties. Alexander Hamilton introduced the first excise taxes, to be placed on the manufacture, sale, or consumption of certain commodities. The so-called whiskey tax had to be paid on grain as it was delivered to the distillery. It was especially unpopular with cash-strapped farmers. In the summer of 1794, several thousand angry grain farmers in western Pennsylvania marched in protest of the tax.
They caused a ruckus, they complained, they had a little marching up and down. Well, Hamilton saw this as an opportunity to prove that the federal government could keep law and order.
Hamilton encouraged Washington to put on his old military uniform and ride out to Pittsburgh to quell the rebellion.
Washington took this very seriously, and the army he sent to deal with the Whiskey Rebellion was 5 times the size of the army that he led across the Delaware during the Revolutionary War. For him, it was a question of who best understood the revolution. The rebels thought they did. The revolution was about taxes. Well, this is an unjust tax. This is a tax we don't like. And as we did with the tea tax and the stamp tax and all the rest of it, we're just not going to pay it. Washington's view was, no, the revolution is about law and who makes the laws and how are the laws legitimate. This tax wasn't passed in London. This was passed by Congress. You have representatives in Congress. You voted for them. They voted on this law. Well, they lost. Maybe next time they'll win. But so long as we have passed this and it is on the books, we have to obey it.
Okay, so basically what it's saying is that the farmers are going to start to protest and they're going to try to overthrow the government because they don't want to pay this tax. But the difference between this and the Revolutionary War is that they elected the people who voted this tax into law. So now they have to actually take responsibility and pay the tax, or the federal government will punish them. So the response by George Washington is going to be that he is going to lead 15,000 troops into Pennsylvania. However, only 2 people will be arrested. So it shows and proves that the federal government is able to maintain order and security for the new nation, something that it was not able to do under the Articles of Confederation. Okay, we're going to skip this part for now. The next thing that we are going to talk about is political parties. So if you will go down in your notes, the chart that is beneath the problem solution chart is a political parties chart. And so we are going to discuss the different political parties. Some of the issues that these political parties are going to debate are going to be the national debate, taxes and tariffs, the treaty with Great Britain, and neutrality. So these are going to be the main issues that the 2 political parties disagree upon. The 2 parties that we are going to discuss are the Federalists, which we've already talked about, versus Democratic Republicans is just going to be another name for the Anti-Federalists. So you need to start recognizing the Anti-Federalists instead as the Democratic Republicans. That's how I'm going to refer to them as from this point forward. Okay, so in your chart, the first thing that you need to put is the leaders of both political parties. For the Federalists, Hamilton is going to be the leader. So he is going to be someone who believes in a strong central government. For the Democratic Republicans, Jefferson is going to be the leader. Okay, the next debate that they will have issues over is the power of the Constitution. The Federalists are going to believe in a loose interpretation of the Constitution, which basically means that they can infer what the Constitution says and do kind of what it says. So in essence, they can exaggerate some of the rights that the Constitution gives. For example, they wanted to establish a national bank, and they do this under the necessary and proper clause. The Democratic Republicans, on the other hand, are going to believe in a strict interpretation of the Constitution. So they believe that they can only do what the Constitution directly says that they can do. The next issue of debate is the power of the federal government. The Federalists want a strong central government, and the Democratic Republicans want a weak central government. Next is the economy. The Federalists are going to support an industrial economy and new taxes and tariffs. So they're going to be siding with the industrial sector. So those people that produce the actual goods, that take the ingredients that you need to make something, and they make the product. The Democratic Republicans are going to support the agricultural economy, and they are going to oppose taxes and tariffs because that's what hurts farmers. The next issue of debate is the national bank. The Federalists, of course, are going to support the national bank because Hamilton is the one who proposed it. The Democratic Republicans are going to oppose the national bank. Foreign policy. The Federalists are going to support an alliance with Great Britain, and the Anti-Federalists are going to support an alliance with France. So we talked about yesterday how Great Britain and France are in the middle of the war. However, the U.S. decides to do what? The U.S. decides to be neutral and not side with either, while maintaining trade with both. Okay, and the last point is the view of the people or social classes. The Federalists are going to favor the elite or the rich class, and the Anti-Federalists or the Democratic Republicans are going to favor the common man or the farmer. Okay, the next thing that you are going to do is you're going to get in a group in just a second. As you finish, you can put up your Chromebooks, and I will give you further directions about Washington's farewell address.